Feel your breath. This very breath is spirit itself. Because that spirit is everywhere present. It is in this room, it is in your heart. It is in the stars. It is everywhere. There is no place that God is not. That is you, called by a different name, but that is you, all of you. It's true for me. I feel that energy in me that is that. And that is true for you. You can feel that. It's right there. And as I breathe into that love, into that endless supply, it never ends, that I feel it down to my toes. It is all there is. And I know that that spirit is a cheerleader, saying yes, saying open more, saying all of that. Because you are so much more than you know. And that cheerleader is always encouraging you to open into that joy. That is your nature. That is your very being, is that love and joy and that power. And in that, there are questions that arise, there is confusion that may arise. There is always the answer. And as you open into those questions, the wisdom of this one source is always there. That is your vehicle of knowingness of everything. Everything. That is your gift, always. And I'm so grateful to know these truths and to know who each of us are in that oneness. And I release it into the divine mind, into the law that always says yes. That is its nature. And with that I say, and so it is.
So today we're doing something a little different, and hopefully you all read the e-news, and for those who didn't, we're doing questions and answers. And so it's sort of questions and answers about the science of mind and how to apply it and how to live it, or about how to be a spiritual person in this side. So a couple of my minister friends, when they do this, call it Stump the Minister. And so a couple rules. Angelina has a microphone, and if you're really nice to her, she'll share it with you. If you have a question, and we ask that you do speak into the microphone so that our online community can also hear what you have to say. And we have the online community can put a question into the chat in Zoom, and Robin Lee, who's at the back, will read it out to me, and we'll do our best to respond to that. Before we start that, I have two quotes that I'd like to just have you contemplate. The first one comes from Mother Teresa. She said, "You should pray and meditate every day so you know that you are loved, so you feel the presence of God's love in your life. This is the only way you can truly help others and serve the poorest of the poor. We have to give from a full heart, one that is saturated with love overflowing to others. Before we can give freely, before we can live flat out, we have to know that we are loved. This is why you should pray and meditate every day so you can remember that you are loved, letting it fill your heart and your body. Let it fill every cell of your being, then give it all away." And from Mark Nepo, kind of in the same vein, the Tibetan Buddhist tradition has a meditation practice called Tonglen that asks us to breathe in the suffering of the world, to hold it in that unbreakable place of compassion, and then to breathe back light. The beauty of such a practice is that it assumes and affirms that there is something timeless and indestructible within each of us that can heal the world if we just open ourselves to it. So, take in a nice breath. Just notice if there's a question that comes up. If it's your first time here and you're going, what the heck is this thing? If it's your 1000th time here, just anything that you want to ask regarding kind of the spiritual life, what it's like to be a spiritual being in this world right now. In the back there, Miriam.
Good morning. How do we know we're making progress?
If you're attempting anything, you're making progress. Our theme this month has been practice makes imperfect, but we do practices anyways without trying to get somewhere. There's no there to get to. But just simply doing the practice, just simply opening the heart, just simply being in that state of prayer allows us to open to that, because the movement of spirit is always forward. And so if we're just playing with that, it's like being on a surfboard on the ocean. You're moving with the ocean, whether you want to or not. And so that's how you know you're making progress. But we oftentimes get wrapped up in this, well, it should look like this, and I should be here by now, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's just mind chatter that sort of has this idea of there's somewhere to get and there's some way it should look. And your way of progression and my way of progression and anybody else's way of progression is always different. But just simply, if we're opening to it, if we're doing practice, if we're playing in spirit, we're progressing, just simply because evolution is always forward, as Ernest Holmes says. Spirit is always growing more. So does that, yeah, thank you, great question. We get these ideas of, I should be here, I should be feeling like this, I shouldn't be feeling that anymore, et cetera, you know. We all still feel things. Yes, Susan.
So, this is Susan speaking. Am I on?
Yeah,
Good.
you're on.
Okay, so something that continues to puzzle me when we say we're all one, we're all of the one, and then I look at people who don't appear that way to me, like I want to say except for, which I know isn't it, but I have a really hard time embracing or acknowledging, or whatever the word is, those that don't, how can we put this? I don't want to say don't fit, but they're totally out of the way we think, and they're mean-spirited. And I have a hard time with them being of the one.
How many other people have a hard time with that? So there's the capital T truth, that we are all one. And then there's and we don't all know it, and we don't all act from it. We talked about using the law, the process of creation, if you will. And we can use it to create more life, or we can use it to destroy more life. It doesn't have an agenda, just like electricity doesn't care how I use it. I can use it to, toast my toast, which I don't do anymore because I don't do that many carbs. Or we can use it to electrocute somebody, right? Electricity doesn't have an agenda. It just follows. So part of the reason we do this kind of a teaching is to start to lift the awareness of people. To start to say, wait, that's not the way to live. There's another way to live. Living flat out doesn't mean I'm going to take everything from everybody else and hoard it to myself, or be mean-spirited, like you say, or anything. It means I'm going to allow the life that's spirit to live through me. And that's a different mindset. And yes, a lot of us don't know that yet. And so what we encounter is people who are on all levels of growth and awareness. Ernest Holmes used to say there are beings that are as far above us as we are above a tadpole. in consciousness. And so we look at that, and the thing that I can say is I have compassion for the lack of understanding, because what I know is, once in a while I encounter a person who's mean, say on the road or something like that, and I get upset for a moment, and then I catch myself and I recenter myself, and then I go, you know, I've only had to put up with that person for 30 seconds. That person has to put up with themselves for every day, every moment of every day, and their unhappiness and their misery that causes them to act that way until they choose something different. So part of it is to open up, to recognize that we're all one, to recognize that we don't all know that we're one, and we're not going to act that way. You and I and everybody here, have we ever been mean-spirited or done something that we afterwards say, it wasn't real enlightened, you know? It's really hard as a minister when you have a bumper sticker on the back of your car that says, be here, be now, be love, and your name, CSL Rev D, and the license plate, and somebody goes down the road, and you want to just go, let me indicate your IQ to you, and you have to choose something different. So we all have this knee-jerk reaction. I remember Linda talking about one time, one of her teachers said, we're still all human. We're still all animals at a certain level of our beingness. And what we're doing as we raise in consciousness is raising above that, but it's not gone. We're just growing above that. We integrate it. We don't deny it. We don't shove it away and pretend it's not there. But we integrate it. We grow from that. And so it's recognizing the oneness. It's feeling your feelings when somebody's mean-spirited to you. And it's holding them in compassion and holding yourself in compassion. And then choosing again, that's how that person lives. I'm going to live this way. This is Ernest Holmes' be for something and against nothing. So I can notice what I'm against, and that's a starting point. That's a trigger point. I'm against that. Okay, so what am I for instead? And so then it takes it in a direction that I want to go instead of getting locked up into this is what I'm against. I can get stuck there and run around. And then I do mean-spirited things out of that hurt and that anger. Or I can say, what is it that I want to create instead? Does that kind of cover that? It's not easy, by the way. And it's not easy. You know, we have individual experiences of mean people. We watch around the country and the world of mean-spirited people. We watch around the country and the world of people who are just plain ignorant and don't get it. And, you know, our work is to just, you know, that's why I want to grow this church. It isn't about the money or the fame or the whatever. It's just like, I want more people to hear this teaching and to come to and live from something that's more like this rather than fear-based, separation-based teaching. See, the core of all that is, I believe that I'm separate from God, I believe that I'm separate from you, I believe that I'm separate from the planet. And then out of that belief in separation, I operate and spin and do, pardon me, shit, that doesn't work. And so if we can remember our oneness, even in the face of something that's trying to pull us out and convince us of our separateness, if we can say, yeah, I feel that, and it's not the truth, the capital T truth. You know, I used to have a mantra when I wake up at night. There was a period I went through for about 6 months of years ago of having anxiety attacks in the middle of the night, and I get up and I pace the floor, and it just goes, there's only one, there's only one, there's only one, there's only one. And I do that for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and it would bring me back down to a centered place. And after a while, the anxiety attacks were no longer there. So it's remembering that we are one, even in the face of evidence that looks like we're not. That's temporary. That's just shadows on the wall. The truth is, we're one. Thank you. Great question. Luke in the back.
Thank you. So in Eastern practices, such as Tibetan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Ayurveda Vedanta from India, there are specific formulas and practices that lend itself towards having spiritual awakenings, with the ultimate awakening being enlightenment, samadhi. And it takes often years to get to these states. In science of mind, is there any such thing as an enlightened state, as there is in the Eastern practices? And I know that you are familiar with the Eastern practices. So is there any sort of an enlightened state and specific practices to get to an enlightened state in science of mind as it is in Eastern practices?
California, that's the enlightened. No, I'm just teasing. No. Again, that's a destination to get to. So there's simply the process of, if I'm opening up to an infinite presence, there's no limit to the infinite presence. There's no limit to, there we go. There's no limit to the infinite presence. So there's no place to get to, even enlightenment. And so what I understand enlightenment out of my Eastern practice is simply the state of letting go, letting go, letting go of all the places that I keep myself separate from the oneness. And for me, that's been a lifetime process and will be probably a bunch of other lifetime processes. But it's not a state to achieve so much as a process, again, coming back to the way that I talked about Miriam's question, or Marie's question, sorry, is how can I continue to open, open, open? This is why Ernest Holmes said, I'm open at the top. You know, this is all that I know. I've told you all that I know and taught all that I know, but there's more. Go explore it, go find it, go do it, go live it. And so with Eastern practices, well, and for that matter, with Christian practices, with any, kind of rule-based religion or spiritual practice, there's kind of, you do this, you do this, you do this, you'll get this. And what we're saying is, no, there's no this to get. There is practices that definitely help. There's practices that definitely help me open my heart, open my mind, open my whole being to spirit. But there's no there to arrive at. I oftentimes use the quote out of Zen Buddhism of, when you reach the top of the mountain, keep climbing. Because there is no, who pronounces us enlightened? I remember when I was studying Zen Buddhism, my teacher once said that a lot of the Zen masters that were, we read all their writings and like that, they're brilliant, enlightened readings, were horrible people to get along with. And you read the stories of them, they'd go to the local temple, they'd live there for a while, they'd get kicked out, or they get into a fight with somebody and leave, or whatever like that. And so, is that enlightenment? So to me, it's not a state to reach, it's just an ongoing process to continue to open up to more and more greater. He has his hand up again.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Just as a clarification, I know that enlightenment to be a never-ending process. Mm-hmm. And it's not that it's a final state. It never ends. Even the enlightened beings that exist in this world, it continues on and on and on. What it is, though, it's a merging with infinite consciousness. And it's not that it's a final state. It's just that you, who are a finite being, is merged with the infinite consciousness. And it happens through different practices, meditation, living a certain way of life, doing certain types of yogas, and I don't mean the postures. I mean karma yoga, jnana yoga.
So is there a question here, Luke?
Yeah. So the question is, because I'm just clarifying. In science of mind, not thinking of enlightenment as a state of finality, mm-hmm. Are there practices? Are there things to do where you merge with who you are as a finite being with divine infinite consciousness?
Yes. So out on the far wall out there are are 10 principles and then 10 practices also. And so meditation, prayer, and living in a consciousness of oneness are some of those practices. I don't have them memorized, I'm sorry. But primarily prayer and meditation. Our style of prayer, five-step prayer, starts with the infinite is all that there is. And so it takes us out of my finite, what am I, world that I'm, dealing with here, and lifts me up into a higher consciousness. And then remembering that because it's all there is, then it's only logical, and the only way it can be is that I'm one of that, because there's nothing else to be, and we can't be outside of a oneness. So the very first two steps of prayer by itself, of our method of prayer, lift us up into a higher state. And as we continue to practice that, and practice that, and practice that, it becomes something that's more, we live from that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim has a question up here.
It's actually a follow-up on Susan. I love where the direction you took us. This apparent paradox of being one and in these obviously separate bodies. Could you speak to the metaphysics of that in terms of in physics, we appear to be separate, but I struggle with, I don't want to separate physics and spirituality because it's all one. So can you speak to that, address that apparent paradox?
Well, yeah, so we've come to play in human form. We've taken on these skin suits, and we want to appear to be individual, and the infinite wants to have its experience. So the infinite is in a state of oneness, but the only way it can experience itself is to separate itself. I got that, you got that. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, right. So if I'm in a state of pure love, there's no way of actually knowing that I'm in a state of pure love unless I know something other than pure love. So then I can say, oh, that's what this is. Because now I appreciate it more because I've been in a state of non-love.
Are you suggesting that to experience love?
Microphone.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because we want to make sure the online folks can hear.
So what I heard you say is that in order to actually experience this oneness of love, we have to first experience the
Yes.
fear and separation.
Yes.
And it's this vibration back and forth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And I want to speak to what Susan asked, and we got a question. Was that a question? Okay. So you can go for her. And I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but Alice? Great. Alex, okay. But I want to come back for Susan for just a minute. When you're experiencing that feeling of somebody's mean to you, it's not that you do what we call a spiritual bypass. Oh, la, 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 we're all one. Feel the feelings. If somebody's been mean to you, feel your hurt, feel your anger, feel your, whatever you need to feel. Don't ignore it because it's part of the whole process of coming to oneness. So we can actually have those feelings. I remember I've talked about this before, sitting in the middle of a relationship breakup, feeling really sad, and at the same time underneath that there was a sense of joy. And it wasn't about the relationship, it was just joy. It existed there, no matter what. But we still are here to experience all those feelings. So it's not, if somebody's mean to us, we just go, oh, well, I wish them well, and, spiritually bypass. It's, you be responsible, you do what you need to do, you take care of it, you take care of whatever that outer situation is, and then you take care of your own inner self at the same time. So I just wanted to mention that. Alex, go ahead.
It doesn't sound like this is on.
It's on.
Okay. So I wanted to have you address the absence of the concept of evil, and also the how do we explain bad things that happen to good people that cannot be explained by them been attracting it. They've been, mired in that consciousness or whatever to attract that vibration. There's definitely, in my own life, examples where I felt I was under a spiritual attack, and unfortunately the science of mind could not help me understand what was going on. So
Thank you. How long do you have? That is a deep question. Let me see if I can answer that or speak to that in layers. I don't know that I can answer that, speak to it in layers. First of all, there is this infinite oneness. One of the things that people say is, how could God let this happen? And that's sort of like saying, how can gravity let something happen? How can gravity let this thing fall? Gravity doesn't let or not let it happen. So we have to understand where our idea of what God is. See, Jeremy, can you lean that way a little, because she is right behind you. Okay, there we go. Thank you. To understand that there's no big guy in the sky, big gal in the sky, whatever, that's manipulating things to let good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. There's none of that going on. We have to, so many of us were raised with the idea of a God that is making things happen or not happen, allowing things to happen or not happen. So it's not that. It's just infinite presence, just being. So first of all is to get clear on what this infinite presence really is. And then we recognize that if that's the case, then whatever's happening is created at some level within the collective consciousness. And I always like to say, we don't live in a vacuum. We don't create in a vacuum. So to sit there and we sometimes get a little bit narrow in this and go, well, what in my consciousness created that? And the answer may be nothing. It may be that there's something else that we're part of. I remember one time I was in a situation where my paycheck was delayed by quite a long time. And I was sitting there going, what in my consciousness? Why am I, where's my poverty consciousness? Where is this coming from? And I literally heard a voice speak to me and say, this is not about you. Oh shit, it's not all about me? And so to understand that, first of all, there's more to us than just these physical bodies. There's more to us than just our conscious thinking mind. There's more than just, I get cancer because I'm running around thinking cancer, cancer, cancer. Nobody does, well, I won't say nobody, but hardly anybody ever would do that. But we have a layer of us that wants to grow us spiritually. And so we have experiences, and oftentimes we create experiences that in the moment we sit there and go, I do not understand this experience. And down the road, 5 years, 10 years, whatever down the road, we can say, got it. That's why I had this experience, this pain was to get me to here. And so there's no, one of the spiritual bypass processes we can do in religious science is try to pray it all away. And sometimes we just have to be with it and walk through it. There was a minister years ago, several decades ago, named Peggy Bassett, who was a huge, extremely popular minister, had a huge church in Huntington Beach. Sherry knows of her, and got ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And she and all of her practitioners, all ministers, were praying for healing and praying for healing and praying for healing. And she realized this isn't to be healed. This is to be gone through. And frankly, a whole lot of people in religious science got real mad at her. You're giving up. You're quitting. But she was shifting the consciousness into something that's a little bit more expanded than just, I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment and I will have this result. I'm going to do A and B and it will create C. And so I don't believe that Ernest Holmes really believed that. It's gotten taught that way sometimes in religious science, that it gets the narrow little focus of, it's a formula, if you just do this and you don't do that, you'll have this result. It's not that simple. It's not at all that simple. So we have aspects of our own being, our own expanded self, our own soul self, whatever name you want to call it. We have the collective consciousness that we're in, that sometimes we're just here to experience something because we're the place that can experience that and hold that in love anyway. And frankly, sometimes just stuff goes on by and it happens. And part of it is, can I just step back from that, let it roll on down past, and not get myself wrapped up in it? So I don't know if that helps a little bit. The main thing I would say is to not take on blame, shame, and guilt about stuff. We are innocent. We are beings, all of us. Yes, even that person, whoever that person is for you. We may forget it. we may act out from that forgetting. But there's nothing, we need to hold ourselves gently as we would a young child and just say, yes, I understand that I didn't understand that at that time, that you didn't understand that at that time. And come back to that place where we can be love ourselves. Ultimately, the infinite presence is love. You know, the old God of, it's going to punish you for this and not punish you for that, and all that garbage is not true. So I don't know if that helps a bit, or it's yeah, and it's a long discussion. People ask that for children, young children who are, have situations and circumstances, and it's like, what in their consciousness created that? Jesus spoke to that when there was, he was healing the blind person, and his disciples said, who caused his blindness? Was it his thinking, or was it his parents' thinking? And he said, neither. He says, this is to allow God to flow. In other words, I don't understand all the reasons why this person is blind. I don't have to understand the reasons, but I'm here to lift that up, to make it better. And we can tend to, in old religious science, when I first started in 1988, it's like if people wouldn't show up if they had a cold, because people would sit there and go, oh, well, what in your consciousness created that cold? And it's like, no. It's like, welcome. I see that you have a cold, and I love you and hold you in compassionate awareness anyways. Is there something I can do to help? Whole different consciousness. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one short one. Not whole. That's not quite that deep. Thank you for that question. It was an excellent question. Yes, Craig. Uh-oh, this is going to be trouble.
Very high expectations. I'm really good at catching myself when I realize that I'm spinning. But where I go is a place of rejection, of wanting to be separate, of pushing away from the oneness. And after I finish spinning and I can slow down, I realize I'm in the wrong spot, where I'm not where I want to be. Mm-hmm. And can you talk about when we catch ourselves? As you answered Susan, you were talking about catching yourself. What is the process there that you go through, or maybe there's other people that are able to catch themselves and have a process for themselves? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. So we all go to that place of separation. How many people have had a childhood that left them a little bit, kind of scarred, and a little bit kind of, okay? And so we go there. It still is within us. It never leaves us. It's just, how much do I live there anymore? Okay? So maybe when we were young and in there, that was our whole life. And now it's just like, that's a little segment. And once in a while, when I get triggered and pushed, I go back and take that deep dive. But now I have tools to allow me to get, and sometimes by tools, I don't even mean religious science. I just mean enough life experience to recognize I'm not that kid anymore. I'm not living, I had a mantra for a long time. My mother doesn't live here anymore, that I used to say, because, I needed to remind myself that, this wasn't, what looks like and maybe triggered off some feelings of that isn't really what's happening here. And so to pull myself out of that. So one of the ways, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, is to have little slogans, to have little, in Indian terms we call mantras. Something to remind myself of what's the truth when I go there. We're all one. I'm better than this. I am love. Whatever it is, there is only one. Something to, as I'm heading down that deep, spiral, to catch myself at a little stopping point, a little checkpoint that says, wait, don't do that, don't go there. Mary Morrissey talks about that every time she touches a handle, a cabinet handle, a car door handle, any handle. She asks herself, how am I handling this moment? Okay, so I have something there that triggers, that maybe is common for how am I handling this moment? What am I touching? What is it? Am I present now? And so that oftentimes brings us back into that awareness, because from our aware and awake space, we don't take that deep dive. It's only when we've gotten off in something else, oftentimes something else is going on, and then this just sort of amplifies that and sends us down deep. And so it's having a stop point. You fly airplanes. I believe in flying, there's an automatic point where it's like you can't go below a certain level or a certain dive at a certain speed without having something that comes on to overcompensate for that, right? And so having something like that you do for yourself, a practice for yourself, whatever that is. A phrase, my love is enough. My phrase of I am loved, I am lovable, whatever. But something that you can catch yourself as you're going down. And first of all, don't beat yourself up afterwards because, oh God, I went down that slide again. Okay? We all go down that slide. Last week I was spending a couple of days in deep grief over the ending of my second marriage again. That was 13 years ago. And we were only together for 6.5 years, so it's like twice as long as we were together, and it still catches me out once in a while. We don't have to be perfect. And don't beat ourselves up, because how many people go down in that slide once in a while themselves? Go ahead, raise your hand. Yeah, little hands rub. Yeah. And so to not beat yourself up for that, but to find a way to love yourself just as you're doing it. And what I find is that after a while, the dips don't get so deep. They come back up. Thank you. So let's take a moment. Take a breath. And remember that there is only one presence, and it is pure love. Whether we remember it or forget it, whether those around us remember it or forget it, it is pure love. Because that presence is infinite, meaning everywhere, all the time, the only thing that there is, then each person here is one of that infinite presence. Again, whether we remember it or forget it, we still are that. Just like right now, it's a beautiful sunny day, and there's some clouds overhead that help us forget the sun. But the sun is still shining. The sun is still being itself. And so we have clouds that come over us. We have clouds from internally, from inside our own experiences and life experiences and emotions. We have clouds externally in the circumstances and life around us. And yet the truth is we are anchored in a light, in a love, in a peace, in a wholeness that is always present for us to tap into. Always present for us to remember. And to remember that we are greater than the stuff. That the essence of who I am, the essence of who each I in this room is, in the Zoom room and the YouTube, each I is greater than the stuff. And so we remember that and spend more and more time living from that true I, that true oneness, that true wholeness that each of us is. And I'm grateful to be part of a teaching that helps us to remember that. Even if I screw up and forget it sometimes, I'm still grateful to have that knowledge that I can lean into, that I can anchor into. I'm grateful for this oneness and its expression and its life as each of us. And a sense of gratitude and with an absolute conviction in the beauty and the power and the peace and the glory of this oneness and of my own individualization of that oneness, I release this word into a law that process that moves into form, expression, and experience in the most wonderful ways for myself and for everyone here. Knowing it is so. So it is. Thank you very much.